Alright, we have a van with a 3400 engine in it. It's having cooling issues. Thermostat gone bad. Our thermostat, which is on the other end of this hose right here, coming from the radiator, and it's under all that. So what I usually do is I take the throttle body off along with the air cleaner assembly. It's pretty tight in there, but once it's out, it's pretty damn easy. And another thing, if you're going to do a thermostat on one of these things, let me just let you know it's right next to the exhaust. Yeah. And that's why I would usually let it just cool down before I start getting into that shit. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take off that air cleaner hose. Make sure to take off that connector. Pull that hose, the one that's going at a 90-degree angle on top of it. Pull that out slowly. Old plastic will break, it's brittle. And disconnect this right here. What you want to do is slowly pull up on that little tab. And it's a lot more difficult when it's cold. So you pull that. And I know I've already pulled this before, so it's not too bad. That's why you gotta be careful, because it will break. Mine did break, but just note that. Alright, so once you have that apart, I like to set my parts up at the window. Make sure your mass airflow sensor is pushed back in. The rubber's a little hard, so if you want to get like a lubricant or something, kind of slide it in there. Make sure it's not something that's going to get back into your sensor, because you don't want to damage that. Very important. If you have to buy a new one, yeah, they're expensive, so let's not screw that up. Your air intake hose, your air temp sensor, and the hose that went to the top of there went to the back. It's ventilation for the oil, so you don't get any pressurized air inside the valve covers. So next thing, we're going to be unhooking the throttle cable and cruise control cable. Alright, throttle body. We're going to disconnect the two hoses that go to it. Those are very important. Helps warm it up in the morning. We're going to take them, we're going to loosen them up. They're a bit of a pain, but once we get the throttle body completely out, trust me, it's worth it. Because there's a bolt right in there for the thermostat housing, which is this long metal tube. There's two bolts. One that you got to get underneath the exhaust, one up top, and of course that's why we need to get the throttle body out of place. So that's the next thing we're going to do. And it usually helps. Get a new throttle body gasket if you haven't replaced it lately, because a lot more power will be lost due to that. Give you a quick view on what the cruise control cable looks like. It's one that just slides off, real easy to attach. You can remove the cruise control cable by turning the throttle body counterclockwise and snapping the cable with the black headed end off. Which are right here. There's your cruise control. Boom. And your throttle control goes into the wall. You can actually hear the pedal move. Some of you wanted me to show how to disconnect the cables from the throttle body. And seeing how I don't have the van anymore, my grandmother's car has the same engine, and we'll do the exact same thing. You basically take that, and that goes all the way around and slides out the back. For the other connector, you basically have the same setup, and just this cord right here, it loops all the way around and is guided through here. So you loop it back around and then just pop it into place. Better view. Is that right there? That slides out that way and comes off and around. As far as the actual boot coming off, you disconnect it from here and from the box, and they all connect. This one is currently out of place. See this notch right here on the mass airflow sensor? That notch is supposed to sit in there, and airflow is still going the right way. Alright, so this is the proper way for this to connect on here. Everything's in the proper notch. You see that one little tab there, right there, and that's how it's supposed to be. I actually just realized from a long time ago I did all this work over here, and I guess I just didn't put it back together right, or someone else fiddled with it. I do not know. But yeah, the throttle cables, they just go in the groove. You could put like a brick or something on the pedal, it'll open it up, and then you just slide the cables around, pop them from the back. Same thing with the back one. It has its own groove, and when it's all done, just make sure you're not going full throttle when you turn the engine on. So I removed the cables. They're basically the ones that were on top of the bracket, and they're attaching this. Really easy to slide out of place. I'll show you real quick if I can. But basically when it's clamped, you put like a something small and just pop it off to the side, and it comes right off easily. Alright, so now we got all the other stuff that's attached to the throttle disconnected and pushed out of the way. It's really a matter of getting those two hoses, and that pipe is also in front of it. So we want to be careful, because that pipe goes all the way around and back over to the water pump. Now last time I did this, I did a little bending, not too much. Got to make sure that you don't bend anything that'll break. Alright, so the worst part for me is getting the throttle body actually off. You have 2 points where the bolts go in and through. This one is actually the bottom one. Turn this around so you can understand how it's supposed to look. So when it's turned that way, this is underneath that bracket. And can you see that? Now there is a little slot right there that you can just push this down and pull that out. So there's only two places where those bolts go. Now when doing this one, the one that's underneath with the bracket, what I do is I push the bracket down, making sure that it's not too pulled out of place, but just enough to where I can slide a long socket in there, because that's actually a long bolt and the nut is kind of stuck on there, so it winds all the way out. So with the socket, you want to try to slide it past the bracket when it's underneath it, and then the bracket will pop back up. So you'll have the bottom one, the top one, easy, it's right there. So there's only two you have to work with. And also there's a bracket that those cables are attached to, and they are right here. So that's the one, and then the bracket goes over to the top, which is right there. So that's where your other bracket, the other end of the bracket goes for this thing. So I do remember putting this gasket on for them, and it's not too bad. So we're going to try to reuse that and just double check it afterwards. Well, now that we got the throttle body off, we can easily get to that top bolt. Now the bottom one, you're probably thinking, well, how the hell do I get to it? Well, let me show you a little trick. It's really not even a trick, it's just put your hand underneath here and see where my finger's wiggling? That's where it's at. There's only two, so it's not a pain, but the pain of it would be getting the wrench on there, turning it. You'll have to pull the wrench off, put it back on a few times, but it's really not terrible, because once you take this one off, you can loosen the bottom one a little, and this you can actually push down. I don't think I showed y'all, but hey, look there, hose clamp. That's just so I can keep most of the coolant in. Little things. So that's what we're looking at. Real simple, except for the pipe, but that's only one thing. Alright, well, let me get on it. So we got our old thermostat out. I did a few other things to get this out. Let's see. I did go ahead and pull the gasket off slowly. It wasn't damaged, so I should be able to reuse it. Let's see. I took the hose that went to the evap purge control, and I took it off as well. There was just a 10mm bolt, and the hose is right there. Just squeeze the tabs and it slides off. But a little WD-40 goes a long way, so remember to have that handy. And remember, your parts can be brittle. Let's see. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Two bolts. One on the back side, one up front. Front one's always easy. You can see they have a groove for the gasket. Now I think I'm going to tell you about this back one. You know, with this whole thing moving, it kind of pushed up against the bolt, makes it a little tighter feeling, so yeah, you got to go back and forth with the wrench to it. It sucked. And yeah, prepare to get cut a little. I go a little too fast sometimes, and yeah, it cuts. Yeah, technician life. Alright, so now that everything's back in place as far as the thermostat housing, just put everything back in reverse, and then add water to the system, let it pressurize, and make sure there's no water leaking. Alright, next step, after you get all that back together, make sure everything's good and tight. Air filter and all your connectors, If you miss something, you can probably find it when you start it up. But for now, I'm pretty sure I got everything back together. Got your coolant. I've got my special funnel. It was a little bit more expensive than your average funnel, but it holds itself up and I can add as it's running. So let's go ahead and do that and go from there. That's the kind of shit we want to look for. This hose right here needs replacing. Alright, I didn't show the whole procedure with the funnel and all, but when you're using the funnel, fill it up to about halfway. Use the bleeder valve here and the bleeder valve here. Open them up to where the air can come out. As soon as coolant comes up, cut them off. And then also have your hose that goes to the reservoir. Have that cut off. Basically kink it so it doesn't pour straight back in there. If it starts to overfill, check your bleeder valves again, make sure there's no air. Repeat process basically until everything, all the air comes out and you're pretty much satisfied with it. Put the cap on, start it up, let it pressurize. If it starts to overheat, then go back to the process of using the funnel again until you have all the air out. Also, when I was letting the air out, I would throttle it up a little using that right there. Boop. So I revved it up a few times. The coolant started going down. Also, you might have some debris come up. Don't use that same coolant, just let as much debris come out and dump it somewhere safe, somewhere approved. And yeah, basically make sure your gauge is usually supposed to be below half, or it'll probably tell you on there or in your manual. But yeah, that's basically it. Test drive and double check, and you should be good to go. Yep. Alright. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, comment, something. Let me have some feedback. Later.